The WHO have released a delicious piece of propaganda explaining that anti-vaccine activism is worse than global terrorism. Meanwhile, you cannot discuss new studies that show information about adverse vaccine reactions. So we're going to have to be pretty careful here, unless we want to be terrorists. Hello there, you 6 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this glorious voyage towards personal and community awakening against Goliaths, tyrants, and titans who want to keep you dumb and distracted. That's why it's so important you turn on that notification bell right now, because we make this content for you every day, and it's vital that you receive these stories now. We are up against some pretty powerful forces. For example, the WHO, do you know where they get their funding from? They've released a beautiful little piece of propaganda that reveals that anti-vaccine activism is the worst threat facing the world. It's worse than terrorism. It's worse than anything. Imagine something. It's worse than that. It's the worst thing there is. Meanwhile, there are some studies that have come out that make some interesting claims about adverse vaccine reactions based on available information from the NIH and existing vaccine companies that we literally cannot discuss on this platform, but we will discuss in full over on Rumble. So we'll have to self-censor some of the content here, because otherwise we'll be banned from this platform, and we want to stay on this platform because it's so important that we're able to connect with you. So let's show you their propaganda from the WHO, who by coincidence provide the community guidelines for this platform. They work in lockstep in conjunction with one another, and then the little pieces of information that I'll be giving you about adverse reactions based on studies from NIH and other pharmaceutical outlets, we will self-censor, but you'll be able to get the gist of what we're saying. But to watch it in full, watch it on Rumble. Let's have a look now at the WHO's brilliant piece of propaganda.
We have to recognize that anti-vaccine activism, which I actually call anti-science aggression.
That's what I call it, because that sounds worse, anti-science aggression. Because science, that means objectivity. That means empiricism. That means experimentation. That's what science is. And of course, if science was funded in a particular way and had a particular desired outcome or agenda, like for example, to accrue profits and revenue, it would still be science. That wouldn't mean that it was a subset of a corporatist, globalist movement. No way. It's still science. It's science till I say it's not science.
Has now become a major killing force globally.
It's a major killing force. Are there any other killing forces you want to discuss? No.
During the COVID pandemic in the United States, 200,000 Americans needlessly lost their lives because they refused a COVID vaccine.
Okay, well, let's make sure there's data on that.
Even after vaccines became widely available. And now the anti-vaccine activism is expanding across the world, even into low and middle income countries.
Even those people, even poor people are anti-vaccine now. I mean, that's not as bad because we won't give them vaccines anyway, because Bill Gates won't allow them to have the patent. So that's not as bad, but it shows you how bad even people that can't afford the vaccines don't want the vaccines. And that's a problem.
It's a killing force. Anti-science now kills more people than things like gun violence.
It's worse than guns.
Global terrorism.
Worse than terrorism, that's bad as well.
Nuclear proliferation or cyber attacks.
The worst thing you could have in this world is Putin and not being vaccinated. My God, just imagine an unvaccinated Putin.
And now it's become a political movement. In the US, it's linked to far extremism on the far right.
Far right as well, you know, similarly, there's two things. Not wanting to take a medicine for reasons that we'll be talking about in a minute, and also being a racist. Somehow those things have been combined, almost as if you want to smear people who dissent to ensure that that message can never reach people.
Same in Germany. So this is a new...
Literally got the word propaganda repeated again and again and again, because it is propaganda.
Face of anti-science aggression. And so we need political solutions to address this.
What, like censorship, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, the subject of the current WEF Davos Convention? What a coincidence. Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to create an appetite where people really want censorship. That's interesting, isn't it, that they're doing that? Almost as if the elite powers cannot cope with the technological revolution and the sudden ability to immediately communicate data, so need a machine now to crush dissent, smear opposing voices, and control the narrative. Co-opting all available voices and shutting down any opposition. That's weird.
Political solutions to address this.
World Health Organization, they're proud of it. They've put their logo up at the end of it. They should be embarrassed about that thing. Okay, so there's their propaganda. Here's some information. And of course, the WHO provide the community guidelines when it comes to medical matters for this platform. So we're going to have to be careful here. Join us on Rumble, where I will not be censored. That's why we're there. Not because suddenly now I'm against people expressing themselves however they want to, or what their culture is, or their race or origin. All, as a matter of fact, matters where I have nothing but love, compassion, and acceptance. Not even tolerance, because there's nothing to tolerate. Only we love. Now, this is written by two far-right worse than terrorist nuclear threats. For example, this terrorist bastard, Robert M. Kaplan. Yeah, sure, he might be Emeritus Distinguished Professor at the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health and an Adjunct Professor of Medicine at Stanford University's Clinical Excellence Research Center. But that's not the full picture. As well as that, he's a terrorist. Oh, yeah, he's also an elected member of the National Academy of Medicine. But he's also worse than a nuclear bomb. Alongside him, his dastardly companion in this murderous endeavor was Sander Greenland, Emeritus Professor of Epidemiology and Statistics at UCLA and Fellow of the American Statistical Association and Royal Statistical Society. And he's also worse than a loaded gun pointed at an orphan. So obviously some of this will be censored, available in full on Rumble. Is it me? Or does the future feel more insecure and uncertain? Wars, pandemics, lies, trickery. My cats keep having kittens. The last one's personal. For those who are in the United States, there is a way to secure your hard-earned nest egg. American Hartford Gold make it easy to protect your savings and retirement accounts with physical gold and silver. With one phone call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door, or inside a qualifying retirement account like your IRA or 401k. American Hartford Gold is the highest rated firm in the US with an A+ rating from the BBB and thousands of satisfied clients. Right now, they will give you up to $5,000 of free silver on your first qualifying order. This offer is only for US customers. Call 866-505-8315. That's 866-505-8315, or simply text BRAND to 998899. Get up to $5,000 of silver and protect your future in this crazy, crazy world with some solid precious metals literally made in stars. In September 2022, along with an international group of physicians and scientists, we published a study suggesting that the risks of COVID-19 vaccines may be greater than previously reported. Using publicly available data from Pfizer and Moderna studies, okay, so it's Pfizer and Moderna's studies, they're just collating and presenting existing data. We found one serious adverse event that translates to about for each million vaccine recipients. Many physicians and scientists believe that vaccination programs are the key to ending the coronavirus pandemic. Some warn that our analysis might harm public health by stimulating more vaccine hesitancy. Yet, if some concerns are valid, remaining quiet could also result in harm and further erode public trust in science. Seems like a reasonable argument. How about having a conversation and allowing people to decide for themselves? We believe that scientists have a responsibility to report on suspected hazards to authorities. Consider of a serious adverse reaction in the context of other vaccines. Okay, so here are some other vaccines that were pulled and what the ratios were there. I'm aware if you're watching this on YouTube, you couldn't hear the ratios because that has to be censored because the WHO, who made that piece of propaganda, controlled the community guidelines, so we're unable to say that there. Join us on Rumble. The 1976 swine flu vaccine was withdrawn after it was associated with Guillain-Barré syndrome at a rate of approximately 1 in 100,000. So at a rate of 1 in 100,000, they pulled it. Compare that to the other statistic. In 1999, the rotavirus vaccine RotaShield was withdrawn following reports of interception in about 1 or 2 in 10,000. As widely acknowledged, COVID vaccines prevent hospitalizations, and the clinical trials estimated that between 225 and 625 hospitalizations were prevented per million vaccinated persons. So the same data that these guys are using has some information which I guess they want you to hear because it's advantageous and beneficial, and presumably also true. Perhaps both of these bits of information are true. But these benefits are likely to be concentrated among vaccinees who are elderly or have chronic illnesses. It's less clear which groups are at risk for serious adverse vaccine reactions. Those at low risk for hospitalization may still be at risk of serious vaccine reactions. We only consider mRNA vaccines, and it's not clear that other COVID-19 vaccines confer the same risk. Regrettably, our analysis was hindered by an addressable problem. The individual level data that could confirm or refute our analysis has not been made public. Presumably because that information would make us so excited we all might run into the streets vaccinating ourselves in an irresponsible way. For example, we would have greater confidence in our conclusions if we knew how often individuals experience multiple serious adverse events. Pfizer, Moderna and the FDA have these data but have kept them hidden from public view for some reason. That data was a surprise for your birthday and you've spoiled it! This information is essential to the understanding of the balance between vaccine benefits and harms. Who would have a vested interest in influencing or biasing the balance between vaccine benefits and harms? I don't know. Let me know in the chat. We are calling upon Pfizer, Moderna, and the FDA to release all information needed for a comprehensive assessment of these products. Why would you not just do that anyway? COVID-19 vaccines are now among the most widely disseminated medicines in the history of the world. They have cost taxpayers tens of billions of dollars, which you'd think would give you a right to transparency, wouldn't you? Rivaling the annual US federal expenditure on biomedical research. There's no legitimate reason why scientists and the public should not have the access to the evidence that justified that purchase. Seems reasonable. Let me know if you hear anything here that sounds like a conspiracy theory or something. Like, when you hear something, tell me, put it in the comments. That was a conspiracy theory. Yet, evidence is being withheld, which adds uncertainty to our conclusions and leaves lingering questions about the scientific foundation for COVID-19 vaccine promotion. Public posting of raw data is a reasonable response. Open data is becoming the norm in science and is now required by many leading journals. The time has come for the FDA and EMA to reopen their investigations and for Pfizer, Moderna, and all vaccine manufacturers to provide the data that will allow scientists and physicians to address outstanding concerns. You terrorist. You nuclear threat. That is worse than ISIS. I've seen some of ISIS's videos, have you? And they made me sick because of the lack of humanity, the barbarianism. But this, for example, statements like there is no legitimate reason why scientists and the public should not have access to the evidence that justified the purchase. You terrorist. That is real. Whoa. That's actually took the wind out of yourselves a bit, that bit. And what about the bit where they said the vaccines are among the most widely disseminated medicines in history? They've cost the taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. Oh, you make me sick. I've heard some rumors in my time, but this, I wasn't ready for that. I thought I had a strong stomach, but that's actually turned it. Is Guantanamo Bay being closed? Because we need it open again. Get the orange jumpsuits. Get these guys in there. Get the water. But is Dick Cheney still around to do coaching on waterboarding? Because I want these so-called scientists with their wacky views, like allowing the public and other scientists access to data. I'll give you access to some waterboarding, you bloody terrorist. Anyway, maybe the WHO ain't that bad. They're probably an objective, agenda-free organisation with no concerns in the world other than helping us. Put your bloody conspiratorial mind at rest. The Gates Foundation, yeah, I've heard of them. Bill Gates' foundation. The Gates Foundation is the second largest contributor to the WHO. Okay. As of September 2021, it had invested nearly $780 million in its programs this year. That's a good program, though. That's charity, isn't it? That's philanthropy. Giving it to the old WHO, who, they've got no real power except the power to control what's on, for example, YouTube. The community guidelines are controlled by WHO. You can read that for yourself. So in a way, you could say that Bill Gates has some influence over what's allowed on YouTube. Could you? Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. For an intergovernmental organisation such as the WHO to be so reliant on private philanthropy, especially one whose leaders have personal interests and investments in healthcare, is problematic. For one, it gives a non-government actor an outsized influence on the development and health priorities carried on by the international organisation. Oh right, yeah, so this guy never been elected by anybody. His wealth has now been accrued and is now invested in a highly influential body and is called philanthropy. There's no way that influence could lead to further opportunity for profit and power, is there? Let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments. Be careful though, because it'll be censored, because it seems like Bill Gates has got some influence around there. While private foundations can be very generous, they can also be even faster than governments to change their mind about donations, or more dogged in demanding that their funding is used for specific priorities over others. Private foundations' resources tend to be more dependent on the stock market and other investments that could have financial interests that run contrary to their stated missions. Oh, that's weird. That would mean that their stated missions are untrue. This has been the case for the Gates Foundation, which was once a big investor in fossil fuels, and is true of some of Bill Gates' personal investments, which include farmland that sells its produce to fast food chains. There you go then. I don't ever see him turning up on the TV saying, well, it's really bad for you, McDonald's and stuff, but actually it's sort of quite profitable also. That's why I sell them stuff. I don't see him. He's all about helping these farmers and corn on the cob and all that stuff, isn't it? Never telling you what he's actually up to. I had the corn on the cob for lunch. If a private foundation were to become the WHO's highest donor, it would be transformational, said Lawrence Gostin, faculty director for the O'Neill Institute at Georgetown University and director of WHO's Collaborating Centre on National and Global Health Law. When WHO was formed as an intergovernmental organisation, it would have been unimaginable that a private foundation could have such influence, he continued. Well, imagine harder then, because it's happening, baby. It would enable a single rich philanthropist to set the global health agenda. What? Gostin said, referring to Bill Gates, co-chair of the foundation. Gates himself was slammed by some global health experts last year when he defended stringent intellectual property rights as the best way to speed innovation and move some sort as prioritising profits over vaccinations. influence. So what you could say is if Bill Gates believes so strongly in this vaccination program that he's willing to significantly invest in the WHO, which might give him some influence over the WHO's policies, which affect what things are allowed to be said on YouTube, then similarly when it comes to other countries that haven't got the vaccines, which you believe in, because remember I've just explained to you all the investment in that, then you would remove the patent so that they could make their own vaccines, which you've already said you believe in, because there's nothing to worry about there, and it's not just because they're profitable or anything, it's because they're good for you. Oh, they're not willing to remove the patents. He's explained in a variety of ways why that is, but for me, it just don't make sense. So there you are. You've seen some WHO propaganda. You've heard the gist, depending on what platform you're watching it on Rumble, you can get the full truth of what this adverse event study has revealed and suggested using information from Pfizer, Moderna, and the FDA. Why don't you make up your own mind? Or do you need someone else to make up your mind for you? Would you like someone to control the information you get access to? Well, you heard the bleeping. It's been done for you to prevent you having to think or worry or make decisions for yourself. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and the chat. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these and turn on that notification bell, because we have to do everything we can to get this information out to as many people as possible so that we can organize by creating alternative narratives. Remember, they work this hard to control the information because they know the power the truth has, and they know the power you have. More important than any of that is that you please stay free.